All right, so one particular type of extreme weather that we're going to focus on is hurricanes. So a hurricane is a very large, rotating, you can see the rotation taking place here, tropical weather system. It has a calm eye located right here in the center. You can see that little circle within the larger cloud system right there. And it has very high wind speeds of at least 75 miles per hour, but it can be a lot faster than that. And the one thing that I really want you to notice here is look at just the wide range of how huge this thing is and how many people are impacted. We always want to think about like what's the human impact here. And whereas like with a tornado, it could be really heavily focused on like one narrow area where a lot of houses are just like demolished and the ones next door to them could be perfectly fine. This is more likely to maybe cause less damage at first, like for the intense rain. It'll be less damage to each particular house that gets hit, but so many more houses could be impacted by it. And the other thing that you're going to notice that it is fueled by the water. I mean, look how while it's over the water, how intense it is, and then it starts to dissipate as it gets onto land. Now, it basically runs out of fuel when it gets to land, but it doesn't actually happen until it gets much further inland. Like, look how far in it goes. It covers so many states over here. And of course, it gets rocked right in this area first. But as it moves further in, it runs out of water, runs out of fuel, and it will eventually dissipate there. So this is a great video. I'm going to highly recommend that you take a look. This talks about the different categories of hurricanes. So we have category, I believe, 1 through 5, they call it, 5 being the worst. And it shows you what can happen to a house as that happens. So highly recommend you check that out. Weather Channel, always great at showing these things. And this is a pretty interesting thing, too. It says why hurricanes hardly ever hit Europe. So you see how these hurricanes are moving up this side, and it corresponds to the Coriolis effect, which we talked a little bit before about those global winds. Remember, the global winds are kind of always pushing in the same direction, and it all has to do with convection currents, these things rising and falling, the winds, and also the curve, the way that the Earth rotates. All of that factors into which direction is this going to push these hurricanes. So it's pretty interesting how that happens. And then here you have the eye. So you're going to want to write this one down. It's the region in the center of a hurricane that is relatively calm, and it surrounding the eye is the rough part of the hurricane. So right here, it's relatively calm. Right around it is the most intense part of the storm. That's what we call the eye wall. So the eye is really deceiving. What sometimes will happen to people is that, let's say that they're in the middle of a hurricane, and then it seems like it's over. But what that could just be is the eye of the storm right there. So it can sometimes lull people into a false sense of security where they will start to go outside perhaps when they should definitely be staying inside. And some people have died because of that, because maybe thunder or lightning comes back on, they get struck by lightning, or something falls on top of them because they were outside where they thought the storm was over, and the second part of the storm is just about to start, and the hardest hitting part is coming right after that eye moves along past them. Now, the thing that does probably the most damage is this. This is called the storm surge. So there's a couple of GIFs, however you pronounce it, down here to show you. You could see the crashing waves right over here and how it demolishes this fence right over there. And over here, you could see the storm surge coming in. Now, it looks a lot like a tsunami. But we've learned before that a tsunami is always triggered by an earthquake or like some kind of a rogue wave that kind of comes out of nowhere, but had something triggered it, and it's normally just one big wave. This is more like super intense flooding that happens, and it only happens generally because of the intense hurricane that's happening. Now, if you look over here on the top left, we're going to watch some footage of the typhoon Haiyan. I think it was Haiyan. Perhaps it was a different one. And how quickly that storm surge comes in. Now, one quick thing, you may hear about typhoons and cyclones, and you're like, well, I thought we were talking about hurricanes. They are all the same thing. It's just another name for the same thing. Generally, why we call those things differently is it's about where it impacts in the region of the world. So if you hear the word hurricane, it generally refers to the United States, that you're going to hear that. If it is a cyclone, that generally impacts India. And if it is a typhoon, it generally is impacting most of Asia other than India. So let's take a look at, if it plays, hopefully it can play right in here. So just take a look at how quick this happens. Now, this is a poorly constructed house. Look how quickly that storm surge rushes in. Look, no, like raining a lot, but no storm surge yet. There comes the storm surge. I mean, that is just intense storm surge right there. And this is all within, I mean, about 30 seconds. That thing is gone. Terrifying, right? I cannot recommend enough that you watch the Weather Channel video right over here. It shows the storm surge, and it shows this new type of mixed reality simulation, and it's so unbelievably well done. I think it's the best simulation that I've ever seen, and it's really cool that the Weather Channel like kind of put this into their budget to make it look so believable. But it just shows you like how deadly and dangerous specifically the storm surge can be, and really why that's probably the thing you'd have to look out for the most during a hurricane.